Would you like to accelerate your career and reach your full potential in just minutes a day? Welcome to the LEADx Show with New York Times best-selling author and Inc. 500 entrepreneur, Kevin Kruse.
What is a simple secret to great presence? Hello everyone, Kevin Kruse here, helping you to achieve your full potential 5 days a week. And in just a minute, we're going to talk about communicating better at work and beyond. But first, don't forget to visit LEADx.org, where you'll find hundreds of articles from the world's best business and career writers out there. Sign up for our quick read newsletter, which is packed with actionable tips that you can try out right away. Visit LEADx.org. Our guest today is an award-winning author and the managing partner at Exec, Comm, a communication skills consulting firm. Whether coaching individuals or working with groups, he helps professionals from global organizations have greater impact through communication. His new book is Simply Said, Communicating Better at Work and Beyond. Our guest is Jay Sullivan. Jay, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Kevin. Appreciate it.
Oh, we're excited to have you. And in a minute, we're going to talk about Simply Said. But I always like to start with a universal question, which is, can you share with our listeners a time when you failed, maybe early in your career, and what did you learn from it?
Sure. Glad to. I've actually had probably 4 different careers when I think about it, but my first job right out of college was as a high school English teacher. I was down in Kingston, Jamaica, working at a boys' high school there and living at a nearby orphanage, helping some nuns run the orphanage. And when I was teaching, I went in the door. I had 40 kids in the class, 40 boys, and I thought, I want to make this fun for them. I want to make it exciting and engaging. And I ignored all the advice I'd gotten about really establishing discipline in the classroom. And so I went in there all smiles and friendly and tried to make sure that the kids were having fun. And from day one, they walked all over me. I had footprints on my forehead. They were just walking all over me and not doing anything I needed them to do. And I realized early on that I'd lost discipline. And the only reason that I was able to maintain any semblance of respect from the kids was that I didn't give up the fight. So I kept fighting with them for discipline in the classroom. And I learned pretty quickly, but once you've lost the discipline in the classroom, it's hard to get it back. But I kept at it all year, and the following year I went in the classroom and had a completely different approach with the kids. And they ended up having a much better educational experience the second time around because I learned my lesson to listen to the advice of my elders.
That's great. I appreciate that. Yeah, I was just telling someone else that it's amazing. As I get older, my dad gets a lot smarter. So, Jay, your new book is Simply Said, Communicating Better at Work and Beyond. And listeners, I just have to set this up by saying, I'm on the road every week or every other week doing speeches and presentations. I've taught others how to do it. I loved this book, and I actually learned some new things that I tried out last week. And one of my favorite parts, Jay, you have a powerful chapter says, it's called Making the Most of Your Body Language. And you say that the ultimate secret is actually eye contact, which surprised me. So tell us more about that.
Sure. Well, eye contact is how you connect with people. And when you think about what it means to present, it means in large part to be present to other people. One of the key ways that, at least in a Western business culture, that we suggest to people that we're present to them is to maintain our eye contact with them. It doesn't mean staring somebody down. It means maintaining the eye contact in a way that says, I'm here for you, I'm present to you. You drop your eyes every once in a while to take a note or look at your note, not a problem. But you maintain the eye contact because that allows you to feel like you're building a relationship with somebody. And when you think about it, in a presentation, a formal presentation, if you've got a couple dozen people in front of you, it's not really a conversation, because the communication's going all one way. But if you look out at the audience and you make eye contact with just one person for a full thought, that's all, just a full sentence, about 5 to 7 seconds. That's long enough for that person to feel like you're talking right to them. And then you move on to the next person for a full thought, and the next person for a full thought. But if you try to talk to everybody at once by scanning your eyes around the room, if you're talking to everybody, you're really not talking to anyone. And you lose that sense of a conversation, and you lose that sense of a connection.
Now, this was very powerful to me. And Jay, it was literally 4, maybe 5 days ago, I was presenting to a room of about 100 people. And specifically, I remembered your words, like make eye contact for a full sentence, a full thought. Because, of course, before that, I would look from person to person. I know it's good to make eye contact. But I realized I was never holding it for very long. And to my surprise, I mean, it was a great exercise because it was harder for me to do than I thought it would be. And you could see the body language shift in the person that you're making eye contact with. Is that your experience as well?
Sure. And actually, if you're talking to a large group and you look out at the back corner of the room, don't look at a group of people. You zoom in on just one person in the back corner. I guarantee you, everybody around that person also thinks you're looking right at them for that moment. And then you switch to the other corner. Then you switch to somebody 2 rows in. Then you switch to somebody off to the side. But a full thought each. And it really comes from a misinterpretation when early in our lives in any public speaking class, somebody says, make eye contact with the audience. People misinterpret that as scan the audience. And that's really what's not going to be helpful.
Love it. So you also say that most of us approach a conversation as if it's a competition. So what do you mean by that, and how can we become better listeners?
Sure. Well, you and I are in a conversation at a meeting, and when you pause, I think that's my time to jump in. And then when I pause, you jump in, and you pause again, and I've got to say, okay, I can take over the conversation. I can tell my story. I can give a better example. And it is this fight for control of the table when we're communicating. If instead, when you finish talking, I say, Kevin, that's really interesting. Tell me a little bit more about that. Or, that sounds really interesting. Can you elaborate? I give you the opportunity to keep talking. That tends to be a worldview change for people on the nature of a conversation. You don't have to fight to contribute. I'm welcoming even more from you. Think about it. When was the last time in a conversation anybody said to you, wow, that's really interesting. Tell me more. We build a reputation for ourselves as better listeners when we do that.
Jay, those, especially those final 3 words. I mean, again, listeners out there, this works wonders. Tell me more. I mean, I think there's almost something magical about that phrase. And Jay, you're right. I mean, I challenge people to think back or be aware of this now moving forward. How often does anybody invite you to keep talking or to expand on your thought? And so it's very powerful when we can do that for others. And I also thought this was very helpful, very practical. You say, we get asked questions sometimes from an audience or someone that's coming more from feelings. It's, someone that's a team member's worried or stressed out or maybe even hostile. And you say that we should remember the acronym ART, A-R-T. What does it stand for? How can we use that?
Sure. ART stands for, in essence, it's the art of responding to an emotional question. And what it means is acknowledge, relate, and transition. So you acknowledge the emotion in somebody's question. Very often in a business setting, emotions are considered illegitimate. We're at business. We're at work. There shouldn't be emotions involved. Well, of course there are emotions involved. People are excited when things are going well. They're upset when they're not. So you acknowledge the emotion to give it legitimacy. You say, I understand you're frustrated with this. I sense your concern with regard to this issue. You name the emotion to give it legitimacy. You acknowledge it. Then you relate to the person if you can, and only if you can, and only if you can do it legitimately. So you don't want to pretend to relate to the person, but most of the time at work, people are upset about things for one of 2 reasons. They either feel like they're paying too more for something than they should have to, or that they've waited too long for something. You're delayed in responding to them. And we have all had instances where we felt we were overpaying for something or waiting too long for something. So we can almost always identify with the frustration coming from somebody. So you relate to the person by simply saying, I appreciate that you're concerned about this. I too would be concerned if I didn't have all the information. Or I too would be frustrated if I'd had to wait and somebody had missed a deadline. And then finally you transition and you ask the person, would it be helpful to you if I explained why we're in this situation? And that transition allows the person to relax a little bit, because if you ask it as a question, would it be helpful to you if we did this? Then what happens is they are now in control, not of the issue, but they're in control of the conversation. And that sense of control allows people to calm down.
I love that. The art of handling emotional questions. And Jay, as a final wrap-up, I always like to challenge our listeners to become 1% better every single day. Is there something that you can challenge our listeners today to try out, either at work or at home?
Absolutely. An easy one is to think in terms of how you position yourself and who you are. So when people say to you, so what do you do for a living? And they don't have any context. And you don't have any context for them. You're meeting them in a social setting. And somebody says, so what do you do? Most people will explain what they do. They'll respond to that question by telling you the title on their business card. I'm the executive director of this, or I'm the vice president of that. And what that does is it tells people that we view ourselves in terms of a status we've achieved, which is very interesting, and you should be proud of your accomplishments. But what's more effective, if instead of talking to me about your title or your status, is talk to me in terms of how you add value to somebody else. So forget your title, forget your actual job, and instead think about the impact your job has. And when somebody says to you the next time, so what do you do? Start with the verb help. I help blank, whoever it is you help, do blank. So I help, for instance, I've never introduced myself by saying I'm the managing partner of Exec.com. I say I help people improve their communication skills. It's much more relatable to people. It gets you away from talking about yourself in terms of a status, and it helps the other person see that you view yourself in terms of how you add value to the world.
Wow, I love that challenge. And listeners, you know that I often say life is about making an impact, not making an income. And, of course, the irony is that the more impact that you make, the more value that you provide, the more it's returned. So answering that question with I help and then who you help, I just love that advice. Jay, what's the best way for our listeners to find out more about you and your work?
Sure. Well, they can visit our website, which is www.exec-comm.com, execcomm.com, or they can reach me at Sullivan at execcomm, exec-comm.com.
All right, friends, you've just been mentored by communication guru Jay Sullivan. Don't forget, you can get those links and the notes from this interview over at LEADx.org. You can get Jay's new book from Amazon.com or your favorite bookstore. And one last thing, audience, if you've gotten even one new idea today, will you hop on over to iTunes and just leave a short, honest review on the show? It would mean the world to me. Until next time, of course, remember, leadership is about influence, not authority. So leadership is not a choice. You're a leader whether you want to be or not. My question is, will you lead intentionally?